In Cape Town, many people are still smelling the impact of that ship carrying thousands of cows. The cattle are being held in pens. There's really no way for them to move around. The smell comes from their feces, which, as I understand it, is not being removed. So you have thousands of cows standing, often lying down in their own feces. That then turns into ammonia and creates the smell that people in Cape Town are living with. The SPCA has already been on the ship. It's had to put down several cows, which are being transported to the Middle East to be slaughtered. Rajesh Dana is the port manager for Transnet's National Ports Authority for the Port of Cape Town. Rajesh, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. When a ship comes in, what duty do you have, what powers do you have to make sure that that ship doesn't affect people who are around the port?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and good afternoon to your viewers, and thank you for the opportunity of shedding some light on our weight that's docked in the Port of Cape Town. So, Stephen, the Port Authority, the National Ports Authority, has a stringent and rigid protocol that it follows before it docks any vessel in any of the South African ports. This protocol includes, amongst others, confirming with other state agencies and entities that the vessel is safe for docking in the port. By and large, these entities include MSCC, which is the Maritime Security Coordinating Center, which essentially clears the vessel from a security point of view. We also then confirm a clearance from Port Health, which essentially gives us comfort around the health of the crew and passengers on board any vessel. And in this particular instance, Stephen, we also secured the approval of the state vet, knowing full well that there was livestock on board the vessel. So that's the normal protocol that we follow as the Transnet National Ports Authority.
So someone actually goes onto the ship and inspects it before it comes in?
No, Stephen, that is not the case. There is an interchange of documents and information and confirmations and validations of that information through the different agencies ahead of the vessel being docked in the port.
Okay, so just to be clear, no South African official gets to go on the ship beforehand?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, I'm sure that's the case in many ports around the world. What would it take for you as Transnet to say a ship cannot come in? I mean, I presume it would have to be either there would have to be an infectious disease on board, or it would have to be carrying unsafe explosives or something like that, and it would have to tell you.
So, Stephen, there's quite a few defined protocols and policies with regards to the docking of vessels in South African ports. First and foremost, one needs to understand that there is an overarching international maritime law that also serves in the South African ports. But by and large, Stephen, there is a host of processes that we follow in order to ensure that any vessel docking in any South African port is safe and secure and doesn't pose any threat or harm to both people, assets, as well as the environment.
Okay, so I mean, I realize, and I mean, as I say, I presume that our practices, what you do, is what happens in most ports around the world.
Absolutely so. As I said, there's an overarching international maritime law. There is also the International Maritime Organization, who defines quite a bit of statutes regarding the passage of vessels in and around international waters as well as in sovereign waters.
I know that ships like this have docked in South Africa in the past. I can't recall the smell being a problem. Are you allowed to say to a ship, look, how do I put this? You stink, you can't come in.
Well, one of the defined protocols is the fact that before the vessel enters South African territorial waters, there is a clean of the vessel and the facility so that when it enters South African waters, it is safe and secure. In this particular instance, we are led to believe from the information provided to us by the different authorities that the vessel was in fact sanitized or cleaned 2 days prior to its arrival in South Africa.
So they say that it was cleaned, and I mean, I've seen some of the pictures. They're horrific. I'm sure you've spoken to people who've been on it. And then when it still smells, I mean, it must have come as quite a surprise to you that they had all their paperwork in place, and here was this horrible stink.
Absolutely. The stink was something that took us a bit by surprise. But having said that, we are of the view that the smell is dissipating at the moment, whilst it's lingering rather strongly, I must admit, Stephen, in the immediate vicinity of the vessel.
I can imagine. So there are many people, I think, who are really quite upset at the way these animals are being treated. And I presume, Rajesh, your powers here are very limited, actually. There's probably very little you can do. And I don't think anyone wants to think of an animal that has to sit or lie in its own feces. I know the SPCA has been there. Is there anything else you're able to do? Is it really only up to them? And even then, their powers are very limited as well?
So, Stephen, the basis of the Port Authority taking the decision to dock the vessel was first and foremost on the priority of the cattle on board. We really took the decision in the best interest and well-being of the cattle on board, understanding that the call to the Port Authority was that the vessel needed feedstock to feed these cattle en route to the Middle East. And it was on those humanitarian grounds that we partly based our decision, understanding that we did clear the vessel arrival and docking in the port with all the other relevant authorities as well. But the paramount and what was critically important to us as the Port Authority was the well-being of the cattle on board. I can also further confirm for you, Stephen, that the TNPA are working very, very closely, not only with the ship's agent, the terminal operator, border management, believe it or not, the state vet, Port Health, but also SPCA in terms of ensuring the well-being of those animals whilst in the port, and then also managing all the associated risks of having a vessel of this nature in the Port of Cape Town.
Rajesh, you guys at Transnet have had a rough time. Running the port, you've had a rough time. The last thing you needed was something like this, right?
They say tough times call for tough leadership, and we're certainly starting to display that. We've come through a very rough time, but I would like to think that we've really stood up to the challenge and the task at hand. Sometimes when you're in a leadership role, you need to make calculated, difficult decisions. And Stephen, I can tell you, I'm going to go to bed with a peaceful mind tonight, knowing that the Port Authority has, in this instance, made the responsible decision of docking this vessel on humanitarian grounds.
Rajesh Dana, thank you. Really appreciate the time. I know it's a difficult moment for you.